Welcome to Generation AI, the show where we explore how AI is reshaping our generation. I'm Derek Staahl. On the show today, can AI solve the loneliness epidemic for seniors? Or will it expose older adults to privacy risks and scams? We've got the details on a federal push to study AI use among older adults. AARP will weigh in. Plus, some critics say Arizona's school voucher program has too much fraud. Could AI be the solution? First, let's get to the headlines. Right now, a Tesla owner is facing a manslaughter charge, and the case is raising fresh questions about who's at fault when a car is in self-driving mode. 44-year-old Michael Butler has been charged after his Tesla Model 3 crashed into a home in Texas June 19th, going more than 70 miles an hour. The vehicle hit and killed a 76-year-old woman who was inside the home. Court records show the Tesla was in an automated driver assistance mode called full self-driving mode. But Tesla says there's evidence Butler manually overrode self-driving by pressing the accelerator. Prosecutors say Butler actually put the pedal to the metal for 6 seconds before the crash. We haven't heard from Butler's defense team yet, but some analysts have pointed out the Tesla was still steering the vehicle. This could be a case where criminal liability falls on the driver, but civil liability could be split between the driver and Tesla. In fact, that's what happened in Florida last year for another deadly Tesla crash, which ended with a $243 million civil verdict. Data center developers are trying to get creative to power and cool these critical facilities, but one proposal in Maine is particularly unusual. They want to build a data center underwater. This facility near Eastport, Maine, will be powered by tidal energy and cooled by seawater. Some residents say they're worried about potential impacts on marine life and the region's fishing industry. At this point, the company has only applied for a federal permit to do environmental and engineering studies on the impact of the proposal. The UK's equivalent of the FBI is out with a remarkable warning to parents. Do not post public images of your children. It's all because of the explosion of AI-generated fake nude images. The UK's National Crime Agency and the Internet Watch Foundation say innocent images are getting turned into child sexual abuse material at a staggering rate. Last year, these groups found more than 3,000 AI-generated abuse videos compared to just 13 videos the year before. They recommend parents set their social media accounts to private and enable settings to only share photos with your close friends. They also suggest contacting your child's school and revoking permission to let the school post photos of your child online. Turning to health news now, AI has given an ALS patient in California his voice back. Casey Harrell was diagnosed with ALS 7 years ago. This, of course, is a terminal disease that attacks the nervous system and robs people of their ability to move and speak. Researchers at UC Davis developed sensors that attach directly to his skull and translate his brain signals into speech. The output appears on a computer screen as text, and then it gets projected through his speakers. The team even used old audio recordings to recreate Casey's voice.
It is very sweet to have the ability to look at my wife's eyes when she hears my voice and remind them of what I used to sound like.
The researchers say when Casey tries to talk, the technology records his brain activity, and then they use AI algorithms to map the patterns and ultimately produce the sounds. The team says the tech is about 97% accurate. Beyond ALS patients, they think this system shows some promise for people who have had a stroke or maybe have cerebral palsy. Another area where AI is transforming medicine involves diagnosing cancer and heart disease. A new study published in the journal Radiology finds that AI can spot patterns in mammograms that may help identify women at higher risk of developing breast cancer. The FDA also just cleared the first AI tool that can detect certain forms of heart disease from a routine electrocardiogram, or ECG. This technology, called EcoNext, was developed by Dr. Pierre Elias, a cardiologist and AI expert.
This cheap test, the electrocardiogram, which we do hundreds of millions of times per year, we can't use that to detect things like heart failure or valve disease or pulmonary hypertension. I've read 10,000 EKGs as a cardiologist, and I still can't do it. But it turns out AI can do exactly that.
Wow. Dr. Elias says AI should not serve as a replacement for doctors. He hopes his technology will serve as a co-pilot to help medical professionals figure out which patients need a greater level of care. Researchers are using artificial intelligence to read ancient scrolls buried and burned by Mount Vesuvius nearly 2,000 years ago. A team led in part by the University of Kentucky is using high-resolution X-ray scans and AI models to virtually unwrap these ancient writings found near Pompeii, all without opening or damaging these fragile scrolls. For decades, scientists have thought that these scrolls were unreadable. Well, now researchers say the technology has revealed new columns of text, including previously unknown works from ancient philosophers on topics like virtue, impulse, practical wisdom, and human nature. More than 600 scrolls remain unopened. Researchers say it shows how AI can help uncover parts of history that were once thought lost forever. Well, coming up, from help making appointments to full-blown in-home companions, seniors are beginning to experiment with AI. We'll take a look at the new push to study the effects at the federal level when Generation AI continues. Welcome back to Generation AI. 1 in 4 older adults report feeling isolated or lonely. So could AI be a solution here? That's one of the questions Arizona Senator Mark Kelly and others want to explore. They've now introduced a bipartisan bill that would launch a major study on AI and seniors. And it's got the backing of groups like AARP. Joining us today is Megan O'Reilly, Vice President of Government Affairs over at AARP. Megan, welcome to Generation AI.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So walk us through, why is AARP supporting this bill?
You know, we know older adults are increasingly using AI, and they're curious about it, how it can help them live independently, how they can use it to help navigate their healthcare decisions and needs. But at the same time, there are questions about, privacy and trust. And so what this bill really does, with a focus on older adults, is says, let's study this, both the risks and the benefits of AI for older adults. And so we think this is an important study to take place to really look at both sides, how AI can support older adults, and also what are those protections and safeguards that are needed.
The bill specifically mentions a number of things they want to study, and one of them involves the outcomes related to AI companionship bots. This is one that's gotten a lot of attention recently. There's an AI companionship bot called LEQ. This is a product that's specifically designed for seniors who may feel isolated. It does daily check-ins, it does proactive conversations and wellness reminders and games and entertainment, all to battle loneliness. And we heard from one woman who lives alone. She's got a medical condition, and she talks to LEQ about 5 hours a day. Take a listen.
You'd rather talk to her or a human being?
Well, I'd rather talk to a human being, but that's not possible for me, except if I get on the phone. So I enjoy her better. I enjoy her better than my daughter.
I enjoy her better than my daughter is the last thing she said. So my question is, what are your thoughts on these AI tools? Do you think they can help reduce loneliness, or is there a risk that these AI tools might replace human connection?
No, I think the important thing is that people remain at the forefront of how they use these tools, and how these tools use the information that's being received from them. So I think to that end, social isolation is a real challenge and a real problem for older adults. And these tools and these technologies can serve a real need there. At the same time, there needs to be transparency around how information is being stored, how it's being used, and that there are safeguards and protections for people as they interface with AI tools such as this.
Right, because this is a product that is designed to be in your home, listening to you basically all the time, so that it can respond to your daily routine and offer suggestions and input and whatever. But it's essentially in your home, and it's listening to everything you're doing. So you're saying there needs to be some privacy safeguards.
Yeah, I think privacy safeguards and transparency are critical, yes.
Yeah. What are some other ways that AI might offer support to caregivers or families who may already feel pretty stretched thin?
Yeah, we know that navigating the healthcare system is just such a significant challenge and takes up a lot of time, including for family caregivers. whether it be making appointments, communicating with providers and clinicians, getting prescriptions filled. And so I do think that there is an ability for AI to help people navigate the healthcare system, make it easier, reduce that time. But again, the goal being that people are in charge of how they're using AI and how they're utilizing it in ways that help them and are sort of additive and are not replacing things like your ability to call and talk to your doctor, for example, about questions you may have or symptoms you may be feeling. So that human interaction remains front and center, but these supports can really help reduce time and help you navigate in a supportive way.
Yeah, I hear you using the word support there. I mean, should AI be used to make decisions about an older adult's care or their benefits or their insurance or their medical treatment? What do you think about that?
You know, people need to remain in control of the decisions in their own healthcare. I think what we have said at AARP is, in so much as AI tools are being used in an additive way, there needs to be transparency and there also needs to be accountability around how those tools are being used. So again, at the forefront, healthcare is an incredibly personal issue for people, and healthcare decisions is incredibly personal. And so that just has to be front and center as we look at how tools, AI tools and other technologies can help support that, but that aren't replacing it.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the bill here. I want to show you the legislation. It's only about 8 pages long. It's relatively short in terms of congressional legislation, but it walks through essentially what the authors want to look at. They want to look at the way older adults are using AI, sort of the patterns and contexts of use, the benefits of AI use on things like social isolation, things like that. But also they specifically call out, they want to study the potential risks and adverse outcomes associated with AI, including scams, fraud, financial exploitation, etc. Over at AARP, what are you seeing in terms of scams and fraud with AI? How bad is the problem right now?
You know, AARP has a whole body of work around protecting seniors from scams. We have the AARP Fraud Network. And so we are every day working to educate consumers and protect them from scams across the board, whether it be in the healthcare space, whether it be financial, in the financial space as well. So it's a huge body of work for our organization and really trying to help equip people from protecting themselves against these adverse impacts and the potential for scams and fraud.
It seems like the barrier to entry right now for scammers is lower than ever before when talking about creating a scam that's convincing. Are existing laws enough to safeguard seniors right now in a world where we have such convincing AI?
I think we always need to be doing more. And that's why I think sort of this transparency question, equipping people with those questions they should be asking, and pausing if something doesn't feel right or seem right, to not be afraid to ask those questions. And I think as we talk about the use of AI in healthcare delivery, that is why that human connection, that human interaction has to remain at the forefront. That ability to call 1-800-Medicare or call your doctor directly if you have a question, or you get a call and that doesn't seem right, you know, that probably means it's not right. And so hanging up the phone and calling those that you have those relationships with.
We touched on this earlier, but I want to circle back to the idea of protections. You know, are there specific data safety safeguards or protections, consumer protections that AARP would like to see when it comes to AI and older adults?
You know, I think one thing, for example, is sort of consents, right? You're interfacing maybe with technology, that sort of the consents around how your information is being stored, what that means. There's some, there's some universal standards that are applied in consistent ways, so that you know, again, if you're on a healthcare app, how your information is being used, and the protections in place, and where you need to ask more questions. And so I think sort of the more we can not have people looking at multiple sort of consent forms repeatedly every time they log in, how we kind of centralize that in a way where it's easier to understand, it's in language that people can understand, that makes sense, and they know it helps empower them with that transparency.
We showed this video just a moment ago, but I want to show it again because earlier this year I attended this kind of like an AI training class for seniors. This was held in Goodyear, Arizona at the community center there at the Optum Community Center. And there were quite a number of people in this class. I spoke with several, and the sentiment that I got was that a lot of these seniors were feeling overwhelmed by AI. Some of them really had no idea what AI might be able to do for them, why it might be useful for them. Others felt like they didn't know where to start in terms of just using the product. How do I log in? How do I actually type in a query? How do I use a chatbot? So I mean, my question is, how do we ensure that AI helps all older adults, not just ones who are tech savvy or ones who can, afford the new shiny device?
I think first and foremost, that's built with starting that trust, right, around what is AI and how can that help you. So some of the work that we at AARP are doing is sort of that education and how we connect folks to technology that can help support them, help them live independently. And so that starts with the education work. It also, I think, is building that trust around how these tools can be used, and the questions that should be asked about my privacy, as we've talked about, and the transparency pieces. So I think this is growing at a very rapid rate, and I think trust builds a little bit slower. And so I think we have a lot of work to do, but we're really working hard at AARP to help share information and equip older adults to make these decisions for themselves and have the information that they need to protect themselves as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, what occurs to me when it comes to AI is that, throughout the last several decades, you had to learn a lot to use a computer. You had to be able to type. You had to be able to go through menus and settings and click all these buttons. But now a lot of these AI systems can be activated just with using your voice, just with asking a normal question in a normal linguistic way. And so I'm wondering, what does AARP want the technology companies to understand about developing products and services for this population?
I think number one, the transparency pieces around how their data is being protected, around how information is being used and stored. I think second, the assurances that it's not replacing the human interactions, that this is an additive. These tools are to help support in ways, but they're not replacing those human connections. I think in addition that it's so important that, again, the privacy protections are there, and that people can have and build that trust in the ways in which they personally choose to use these tools as well. And so I think that, at the forefront of, as we look, we have to start with the people that are interfacing, with the older adults that are interfacing with these tools and what they believe and what they need, so that it is supportive and that it is not sort of making assumptions for them. And again, that they remain in the forefront and in control about how they're using these tools, and that they know that the right safeguards and protections are there.
Yeah, and are there enough? I'm not familiar enough with our national, AI or data privacy standards, but it just occurs to me, in a world where you have these systems that can make inferences and just learn so much granular personal detail about people, I wonder if there is enough, data protection legislation out there, or do you think we need more?
I think we have advocated with the federal government that we should be looking at, strengthening HIPAA, the health insurance protections, how your data privacy is protected. So I do think there's an opportunity to do more, and that's something we're working on.
Interesting. So ultimately, this bill directs HHS and the director of the National Institute on Aging to run a big study. Why do you think we need government specifically to run this study? Is there not enough private research happening in the private sector on this?
I think with the pace with which these issues are growing, and the federal government has the resources and data to help lead a study like this on a bipartisan basis, I think this is critically important, for Congress to help lead the way with, as we're looking at AI and older adults, really looking at both, as we've talked about today, those risks and also those benefits, and how, for example, AI can help people live independently longer. So there's a whole body of work in Congress on a bipartisan basis around how we're doing things like supporting family caregivers. Studies like this are going to help support work that's already happening in ways in which I think is really important. And we're thrilled to support this bipartisan legislation and want to see it become law.
Last question. The bill says let's study both the benefits and the risks of AI. Are you personally optimistic or pessimistic about the impact AI will have on seniors?
I think that there is great possibility and great promise. Again, we know the majority of people want to age in home and in community, and I think these tools can help do that, but we have to proceed with caution, and we have to, again, make sure that those protections and safeguards and that transparency is there so that it can fully reach that potential.
So this was a bill that was introduced by Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. If it's passed, the feds will deliver a report within 1 year, and we will, of course, keep you posted on all the progress here on Generation AI. Megan O'Reilly is with AARP. Megan, thanks so much for being on Generation AI.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a blast. Thanks a lot. Hey, so much more ahead here on Generation AI. Critics say there is too much fraud in Arizona's school voucher program. Coming up, could AI be the watchdog this program needs? We'll explore that when Generation AI continues. Welcome back to Generation AI. The Arizona Department of Education is turning to artificial intelligence to crack down on fraud in the state's ESA program. That's Arizona's school voucher program that gives parents taxpayer dollars to send their kids to private school or help pay for homeschool. It's been subject to some level of abuse and fraud, and some critics have called for more oversight to ensure that this money is actually spent on legitimate education expenses. Here's Stephen Sarabi with more on how the state is now leveraging AI.
Arizona is recruiting a new line of defense against ESA fraud: artificial intelligence.
It'll be programmed so that it can identify requests that are not proper.
Arizona's ESA program has been abused by bad actors in recent years. Tax dollars going to luxury items and even vacations instead of students. Now, State School Superintendent Tom Horn says they're planning to use AI to help police the program.
We want to eliminate all of those errors, and AI will do it.
One of the biggest challenges is staffing. The department is understaffed when it comes to people checking what parents are actually spending the money on. Right now, they only have 8 auditors.
We have 2 million requests a year. So that's 250,000 requests per person. That's not humanly possible to do.
The goal is to have AI scan those requests and purchases and approve accounts that are clearly spending money on education and flagging anything else.
Once it's developed, it's almost instantaneous.
They aren't the only Arizona agency using AI. Earlier this month, we showed you how Maricopa County is using AI-powered cameras to search for wildfires.
Is it common to start seeing government agencies using more of AI?
I would say the use by government agencies is widespread, and it's becoming very foundational.
U of A AI expert David Ebert says AI is becoming a highly useful tool for the government and for ordinary people. But users need to be aware it isn't perfect.
You need to use your own judgment. You need to make a decision based on the context, but use this as a way to give you additional information and to check the information that it's giving you.
Finally tonight, homeowners association meetings can get pretty contentious, but things really escalated in Ahwatukee in June when the HOA board there used AI to write up some new parking rules. Apparently the board put a little too much trust in the AI output, and as our Zach Perlutsky reports, they've acknowledged they made some mistakes.
I'm not calling for you to be ousted tonight. I'm calling for you to regain our trust.
It was the talk of the Foothills Club West HOA and drew an overcapacity crowd to Thursday's HOA meeting. New parking policies that board members later admitted artificial intelligence helped create.
Presented it to the board, for this 12-point thing to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages, whatever it is now. And I told him, this is not, you don't have any input, we're going to get slammed.
The board president admitted the new rules were a mistake, saying the board failed to closely review what the AI program produced. The board ended up rescinding the new rules.
This is shockingly common in law.
Sean Harrington is the director of the AI and Legal Tech Studio at ASU. He says organizations can use AI to help create policies, but only with the right oversight.
At crucial decisions where people are making real decisions that are going to impact the lives of others, a human is very carefully reviewing the output, all of it, and then evaluating it, and then going for editing it if necessary, and then going forward with it.
That didn't happen here, and it's a warning for this board and any elected official before using AI to govern. AI expert Andrew Maynard says artificial intelligence isn't perfect, and we all must treat it that way.
I would never say don't use AI, but I would say think about what you're trying to achieve. And in a situation like this, almost definitely the human approach without AI would have led to something better, more robust.
Zach Perletsky reporting there. Good lesson. You got to double check what AI spits out. Thanks so much for watching Generation AI. You can find us Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. on AZF+. You can also find us anytime at azfamily.com/GenAI. We'll see you in the future.